Thanks. My name is Rosie Hewitt. I am founder of Rosie's People, HR and business operations leadership consultancy in London, looking after companies from various stages of growth to enterprise across different territories and working with people globally. My background is HR, people management, business operations, over 20 years doing that in the startup scale for over a decade. Decided to start my consultancy. So now I help directly the people and leaders that need my support, including startups and established businesses.
Hi there, my name is Emily Coolin and I'm a Canadian in the UK. And after 20-something years of building companies on the people and HR space, I primarily work now with founders as a leadership consultant and leader coach, and either working with them on behalf of their investor or their board or working directly with them. I also do spend some time with large enterprise, so I bring both perspectives in. But essentially, I'm a leadership coach, consultant, and facilitator. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Now, you've been doing this for a while. I'm sure you've seen quite a few things out there. What I'd love to hear is some of the things that are quite annoying, but also things that please you when you see founders do this. So what would you say are your biggest do's and don'ts? Maybe if you can think of a couple each, that would be nice. Let's start with Emily, and then we go to Rosie, please.
So I think one of the biggest do's that I see and that I advise on is to be compassionate and expect failure. So when a startup founder is building their company, I think because we see all the really great success stories, but we don't necessarily see enough of the failure stories, and especially when it comes to leadership and on the people side, we don't hear as much about it. So I really, it's a big do. Be compassionate with yourself. That doesn't mean that you have to slack off, but be compassionate and expect some failure. There will be failure, whether that's in who you hire and you've gotten the wrong fit or not being able to hire or whatever it may be, there will be some failure.
I hear you. Thank you very much for that. Rosie?
My advice to founders in early stage startups, don't take critique too personally. And I'm speaking from probably some recent experience of supporting a specific client and advising them to get expert opinion on what they were trying to do. And when the experts came and gave them their very expert opinion on what they were trying to achieve, it was received very, very personally. And I think that sometimes when founders are so, and there's nothing wrong with being passionate, but you're so passionate about your vision, your dream, and you don't want to hear anybody telling you that the approach that you're taking might not be the right one. If you're going to succeed, you need to be open to accepting criticism or advice that may not be super positive. It's not to damage your morale, it's to actually help set you up for success. So be open to that. And one that I always say, be very transparent and honest with the people that you're trying to bring on board on what you can and cannot do for them, from whether it's compensation to career progression to equity conversations. Be very honest. You're hiring adults. They want to be told the truth, even if it's painful, even if it's not what they're used to. Let them make an informed decision. And Emma's already mentioned, be kind to yourself as well. You're going to have failures. But I would say for me, the do's are definitely be open to criticism, be honest, don't lie to people that you're bringing on board, don't lie to yourself, and be very honest and realistic about what you actually lack as a skill, so that when you're hiring a team, you bring in people that can complement and make up for it.
Well, that's some amazing stuff from both of you, and I really appreciate that. Well, time does fly. It's now pretty much 9:15, so we now have 46 minutes left. This is Startup Talent Q&A. We're here to help founders with whatever questions you have for us in terms of your people, whether you want to know how and where to find the right people, maybe how to do a job spec, or perhaps how do you actually come up with the duties and responsibilities that somebody will have? How do you decide who's the right person? How do you interview them? How much do you pay them? How do you build your culture? And all that jazz. This is the place to be. Quick reminder to those of you that are tuning in via the live streams, please remember that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there. So if you do have any questions for us, you'd have to join us here live on Microsoft Teams. The way to do that is either by clicking the links on those live streams, or simply go to our site, startup-to-scaleup.club. Look for today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 151. You click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to your email, and through that link you can join us live here. And when you're here on Microsoft Teams, then all you have to do is just type your question in the chat. We'll then give you the mic and you can ask our team. By the way, there are no wrong questions and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. By the way, just a quick reminder, if your questions are not on talent, save them for the other events we run. Mondays, obviously, today, as you can see, it's talent, but then Tuesday, it's product and tech. Wednesday, it's growth. Thursdays, it's fundraising. Second Friday of the month, it's UK startup law. And third Friday of the month, it's UK startup finances. That all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And you can RSVP to any of them via our website, startup-to-scaleup.club. Just go to events when you're on the site. And actually, when you're on that site, what you might want to do is join our WhatsApp community, which is made of founders, investors, and operators. And if you're on that WhatsApp community, you'll also get alerts to our future conversations. Now, we'll go to some questions that were sent in. If you ladies want to have a look at the chat, I'll read it out loud for those people that are in the live streams. So, okay, he says, we just raised a small Series A for a hard/soft tech clean energy startup in Norwich. I'm assuming what that means is that they've got equipment as well as software. That equipment, we're focused on creating small-scale solar solutions for urban buildings. With our expansion accelerating, we need to bring on an office and field-based fractional HR manager who can develop scalable HR processes without the budget for a full-time hire. What steps can we take to effectively integrate a part-time HR specialist who will be able to handle high volume recruitment and onboarding? Keen to also get tips on setting clear expectations for this role, ensuring it supports our rapid growth goals without overwhelming a part-time member. I guess they want to win the lottery, don't they? Rosie, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this? What would you do in this situation? And then Emily, please.
I mean, I was reading it, and even as you read it out loud, yeah, it sounds exactly as I read it. So, no, I think they're asking for a lot for very little. You know, there does need to be, it's a balancing act. There are certain times when you need to be aware that maybe what you are looking for, especially if you're very aware of the fact that you can't afford it, then maybe you need to defer to bringing in somebody into team if you can't pay them properly for that role, and maybe just use consultants. I mean, mine, and there's a similar to mine, who can help with doing some of these things for you that you can't afford to pay somebody on a full-time basis, you know, and maybe do it on a project-based type situation. I think requesting to have an office and field-based fractional HR manager who will then deal with high volume recruitment and onboarding. Recruitment in itself is very full on. On average, each role you advertise in the UK will get maybe 200 to 300 applications within the week, if not within 2 days. In my case, usually within 48 hours, I take the role down because there's too many applicants. And I need time to go through those applicants and matching them properly. So you're not asking for something that is part-time, even in the nature of what you've described. So it's a bit of a contradiction, the question. So I think they need to maybe go and think about, what do they need most urgently? Is it that they need the HR person to help build the team, build the culture, be ingrained within the business early on, or do they just need support with high volume recruitment, some, I suppose, transactional HR engagements or interactions, in which case that can be outsourced to another external HR support, as opposed to bringing in somebody in-house as staff member who will, I can almost see it ending in tears. Eventually, they will not like the company because they're going to feel overworked and underpaid. So that would be my suggestion. It would be good to. I wish they were on the call so I could ask more questions, because maybe if I had better context, my answer would be different. But based on this, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Rosie. Emily, what would you do in this case?
So I think similar to what you've both already said, and specifically to what Rosie said. So depending on what the raise was in a Series A, obviously, and then what your timeline is to move forward and grow, because usually Series A is high growth. So I would say that you need to, similar to what Rosie said, you have to prioritize what you need now. And I mean now, like in the next 3 months or 6 months. And if that is recruitment, then you can hire a recruitment firm who could be dedicated to you, so they do understand your culture and they can help with that cultural piece, but that's not their main remit. So if the hiring and onboarding, and by the way, recruitment firms can do the onboarding to some degree, that shouldn't be their main focus, but they can do it if they know your business well enough and you can get them embedded enough. But I think if that's your main focus to start, then that needs to be it. If you're looking for that structure, as Rosie said, then a fractional HR who is more generalist HR is a great shout. But they will not, if they're being expected to also do the structure, the HR ops, the processes, all that stuff. They won't be able to dedicate as much time to the recruitment. So I think that you may need to look at a combination of a few things. One of the other things you can take a look at is, what does your existing leadership team look like in terms of not just capacity, because I'm sure everybody's over capacity, but their skill set. Because maybe they can take on, if they're the hiring manager, they can take on a little bit more of that recruitment piece with some guidance and making sure there's consistency and all the rules are being followed. But they could take on a little bit as well, as opposed to just putting it on the shoulders of one part-time HR person who will get overwhelmed. I believe, though, based on that limited description, you probably are looking for a combination of things. Possibly somebody to do the recruitment, and then possibly a part-time HR. But both of those will, to get the right person, you're going to need to do some work to get the right kind of combination of people, or one person or whatever. And it will cost. I mean, to have a really great people person, even if it's fractional, does have an investment being made to it. To the second point of the question about how do I manage expectations, it's exactly how you would want to be managed. So you sit down and say, what is achievable over this period of time, whether that's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, and then have regular check-ins on what's actually being achieved. So that's how you manage those expectations. Because if you're walking in thinking that this person's a magician and they're going to get everything done with, whatever, then it just won't work. But I think if you can sit down and have really honest, candid conversations with that professional, whether that's the recruitment or the HR or a combination of the both, whatever, then I think you'll be able to manage those expectations. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you very much to both of you. And I have to say, I've been in similar situations in the past when I've dealt or worked with startups as a talent partner. And the expectation would be not to only help them hire people and find people, but also get involved with HR. And I try to make it very clear from the beginning that that's not my expertise. My expertise is on the talent side, finding the people, building some kind of brand, kind of have a process in place in, when you bring people, and maybe even help a little bit with L&D, but not an HR person, not an HR generalist. And often I see nowadays startups that probably have 27 people, 17 people, 12 people, whatever it is, but even in the 30s, that they have a HR person. I don't know if I should say whether good or bad idea, but often a lady who's doing that role, and she's the one expected to do everything. And you know what? I don't actually know many of those startups that I've met in that situation that went on to do extremely well. Not in that system anyway. So my advice is find somebody who has got the HR side and some knowledge in terms of recruitment, and then maybe get everybody else to dig in. Again, like the lady said, if you were here, we could probably get a better understanding in terms of what you raised, you're trying to get out of it. Right here, we now have 34 minutes to go. This is Startup Talent Q&A. It's our 151st session. We've been doing these for 4 years, and the idea is that we're here to help you with whatever questions you have on your talent journey. So for those of you that are following via the live streams, please be aware that unfortunately we are unable to monitor your questions there. So if you do want to ask our brilliant ladies on the panel, you'd have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. You can either click the links on those live streams, or if for any reason you can't access those, simply go to our website, startup2scaleup.club. You find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 151. Click join, quick registration, and that brings you into our call. Basically, you'll get a link to your email with the Microsoft Teams link, and you'll then join us here. It's live audio and audio only, so you can use any platform, any device, and you can be anywhere to join us today. There are no wrong questions, so there's no need to be shy. If you've got questions on other matters, however, please save them for the other conversations we run. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of each month, UK startup law, and third Friday of each month, UK startup finances. And also, when you go onto our site to RSVP to future events, you may also want to join our WhatsApp community. Top and bottom of that site, there's a WhatsApp icon, and that would also get you alerts to future events. Now, for those of you tuning in via the live streams, I'm going to read out loud a question in the chat that both Rosie and Emily can read themselves. So, I'm a founder of a seed stage fintech startup in Luton, focused on building mobile financial tools for gig economy workers. As we grow, I'd like to establish a clear succession plan for our head of product development, who's got unique domain expertise. What affordable strategies can we use to transfer knowledge and skills to potential internal candidates, ensuring continuity in case of a sudden transition? Furthermore, how can we create a talent development pipeline that encourages our team members to pursue these leadership paths within the company? So I guess there's a few questions here, but the core one is, how do we build a culture that we can easily transfer domain expertise to a new starter or somebody who takes over somebody else, and kind of have a certain continuity basically there sorted?
And on the other hand, L&D pipeline in general. Let's start with Emily, if that's okay, and then we can go to Rosie.
Sure, thank you. Great question. So to me, I sort of, there's a difference between succession planning and replacement planning. Succession is more long-term and sort of well thought out and usually has a kind of a growth plan attached to it. Replacement planning to me is more of the emergency. You know, somebody wins the lotto, something happens, struck down by illness, whatever it may be, and who can do the job. So I'm a big believer in a 4-to-1 theory. So for every function in an organization, there should be 4 people who can, maybe not perfectly, but they could step in a replacement basis. And maybe some of those are being groomed to be much more effective in a succession basis. So as a founder, I think it is really important for you to take a look around your team and say, who could step in an emergency? And if they have to, what are the things they need? Is it just access to a tool or to information or whatever it is? But do that for all of the key roles in the organization. And then in terms of succession, which is a bit long term, I think that learning by exposure is one of the best ways, with really clear documentation and kind of, I guess, marking, if you will, or, it doesn't have to be policies and process, but just making sure that there's some clear documentation. So I'll give an example. If a founder is the one sort of having all of the conversations about this, the product, as you mentioned this example. So what are those conversations? Could somebody else sit in on those conversations? I guess it wasn't necessarily the founder in this example, but if there's a specific topic, who can help sit on those conversations? Who can learn? Who can ask the questions about why somebody is doing what they're doing? And how are we going to document that? There's amazing tools out there, whether that is an AI tool or whatever, that captures a lot of these conversations and analyzes them and turns them into sort of processes and policies. Utilize it. It doesn't have to be expensive or time consuming, but I think if you can have somebody who you've identified who may be a good fit in terms of, or the closest fit in terms of knowledge and capability, invite them to the conversations, have them involved in the process, get them to ask questions, get them to suggest solutions so that they're really involved. And as I said, document it as you go. Now, that being said, as I said, that is like a really great growth plan. It shouldn't take too long as you're going through, especially if you're in a high growth organization. But in the meantime, also make sure that you have a clear list of more than one person. As I said, 4-to-1 is ideal, of who could step into a meeting or into a situation if needed, so that you're never sort of caught unawares. And that should be for every major function in the group. Even if you're a team of like 3 or 4, make sure that those other 3 people can do the job of that 4th, if that makes sense. They're not going to do all the job, nor perfectly, but they have to have some semblance of competency. Hopefully that helps.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Emily. Rosie, what would you do in this case?
So, I mean, I agree with everything that Emily has said. One of the things that I often implemented in the startups that when I was working for them internally as either the CPO or leading the HR function, was to have knowledge. I suppose we call them skills roulette, where people get to shadow people and learn about what different people in the team do, like Emily sort of talked about, just really having that knowledge sort of spread out across the team, so you don't have one person who then becomes the bottleneck. If they suddenly go off sick, everything stops working and nobody knows how anything works. So you do have some future proofing as well as business continuity protection in that aspect. But also another thing that I often will do, every head of department or senior manager every quarter have to provide a name or 2 of the people that they think would be able to cover for them in the event that they were unavailable for extended holidays or illness or whatever, so business continuity sort of plan. But it also helps us to know which talent within the team that the current job holder feels, oh, this person is a potential leader. This person is a potential star, and we should invest more into training them in this area. I also encourage companies to adopt a learning culture, and just make that part of your culture. If people learn and you have brown bags regularly and bring in experts to sort of talk, where people can ask questions, because of course sometimes in startups, even the leaders have been promoted very quickly and may actually need somebody to say, hey, yeah, you might want to try this instead of doing what you're doing if you've not been successful in that approach. Innovation requires questions. It requires also access to people that have made mistakes and learned from their mistakes, and people that are brilliant and better at doing things, and also doing things in a different way. I always think that it's important for companies to just try to build a culture where asking questions is normal and not something that you're penalized for, because that will definitely help you to have a stronger and more robust business continuity plan, and also be able to identify who your actual superstars and real worth are, rather than the people that just know how to do the talk. But yeah, that's all I can add to what Emily said. Emily's covered quite a lot of it.
Well, that is brilliant. Thank you very much to both of you, and I really appreciate that. I'm not even going to attempt to add anything here. So what I'm going to do now is go to another question. Okay, Manchester, what's specific? Okay, I think this is at least one I personally get quite often. So happy to go into it. Let me just copy and paste. For some reason, I don't know why, but talent is one of the sessions that we get least people coming up here live, although quite a few follow the live streams. For some reason, people are a bit reluctant or maybe scared. I don't know what the word is, but it doesn't make for very interactive sessions, let's just say, although you ladies are absolutely brilliant. Okay, I'm going to read another one out. So this is from somebody in health tech. She's the co-founder of a health tech startup in Manchester. They're at seed stage. And right, so she says, we're creating digital tools for elderly care that enable remote family monitoring. Given our resource constraints, we can't match the high salaries of larger tech companies in the healthcare sector. What specific benefits, aside from equity, could help us attract skilled developers and healthcare professionals who value both career growth and work-life balance? Additionally, how can we position these benefits to emphasize our commitment to making a social impact, ensuring our offer stands out to mission-driven candidates? Let's see. I think last time it was Emily that went first. So this time, let's go to Rosie first, and then Emily, please.
Thanks, Anton. Right. So I think it's this question, as you've mentioned, we do get various forms of it in this particular channels, don't we? So when it comes to benefits, there are different ways of doing benefits, even if you are a startup. So the equity is one thing. Equity could be seen as a benefit, but it could also be seen as compensation. So it depends on your audience. Your audience may not actually see your equity as a benefit. They may actually see it as well, yeah, that's part of my comp, so it's not really a benefit. I think that's the most important thing when you don't really have a lot of fund to invest in benefits. Look at what is available in terms of how much time are you willing to give up, because time also does equal money, but how much time are you willing to give up for those situations where you don't have the budget to create the standard benefits, you don't have the I suppose, the private medical and dentals, etc. So for some people, it could be just saying, okay, we will allow people to go home an hour or two early once a week, and that's it. For some people, that additional 1-2 hours a week to spend with family, or if they have childcare or care responsibilities in general, could be a huge appeal for them. And of course, being in the health sector, it's a very well, most of the health sector workers, at least from what I understand, it's very intensive in terms of sometimes physically intensive, sometimes, well, most times mentally intensive. So actually, health workers and people who work in that sector probably need more time for mental health than regular people, because they're constantly exposed to other people's health issues and constantly having to process that. And of course, dealing with that in a confidential but compassionate manner, it can be emotionally and mentally exhausting. So I would imagine that having access to, I suppose, free employee assistance programs, and EAS is, EAPs are not that expensive, by the way. There are some companies that you can get it for a fraction of what you think it might cost. Just having the ability to talk to a stranger about how their day has gone might be a big difference to them. I know that there's lots of new companies coming up, and new apps coming up. I mean, I heard of one called Oh Honey, and that one's just kind of a fun way of sort of just talking to an AI at the end of the day. That just helps to relieve stress and deal with day-to-day stuff. But I think that this is something that the companies need to decide, like, okay, yes, we don't have a budget per se, but what can we give up? How much time can we give up? What sort of can we bring people in to offer training? Can we bring in special guest speakers to talk to people for free? Can we leverage our network and see if we can ask for people to come and have those conversations to our team? What can we do in terms of time that we can give to people, give back to people, to make them feel appreciated, or to take time for themselves and their families? It's not an easy question. The benefits question has never been an easy question, because there's so many different elements to benefits. And this is also one of those moments where I think it would be great if the person was here, so we could ask more questions to really understand what's your current setup, what are the challenges, what do you have in place, what's working, what hasn't worked, what's being used, what's not being used. Is it possible that maybe you need to switch out something that you already have and switch it to something else? Have you asked the team what would be important to them? Because I always think that that's also a good place to start, is to ask, well, if we only had $5 to give you every month, what would you want us to spend it on? It's a simple question, but it's nice to be asked, and you might be surprised that the responses will help you make a decision that's much more useful.
I want to echo everything that Rosie said. Again, I think probably the most important first question is, what do they want? What is really going to be that key motivator? Because that may not be equity. You may be able to save some of your equity and some of your cap table by not giving them any, because that may not be a motivator. Because there's a social good aspect to this organization from the sounds of it, you may find people who, and it might be hard to find them, but you may do well to try and find people who are passionate about that space, and maybe a little disillusioned if they've been in other spaces that didn't quite have that same level of value system or purpose. So, I think a targeted ad or a push in regards to really speaking to that. Similar to nonprofits, if you think about the fact that a lot of people work for nonprofits or the NGO sector because they're super passionate about the social good, they know that they're not necessarily going to get the top pay. In fact, they notoriously get some of the worst pay. So I think if you can find people who are motivated by the social good, that will help. That being said, I will never tolerate any founder or leader essentially like almost making light of or abusing a team member, especially a really talented one, because it's social good. So you have to put a balance there. You also likely are going to have to tolerate hiring people or make compromise, rather, it's probably not tolerate, make compromise on hiring people who may not be as excellent in terms of experience as you think you need. You could have some rapid growth in some of your talent, and be able to afford them. Some of the top performers you may not just be able to afford them at this stage. And that's something you'll have to deal with. So there's going to have to be a compromise. Really figure out what is the complement of skill set and experience that you need to support your organization, and then how do you work around with that. But I really do think that if you kind of like build the right social message and then actually live it and make sure the culture is reflective of it, you will have people who are motivated, but just don't sort of abuse that privilege, if you will. So hopefully that helps. It is really, really tricky. I'm seeing less and less of equity being a motivator. So I think if you can focus on the other aspects, maybe it's the time off, maybe it's the work-life balance, or whatever it may look like, I would probably see that that's going to be a better motivator than equity, personally.
Thank you very much, ladies. Just to pretty much concur with what you both said, really. I think I might have mentioned this more than once before here. One of our panelists that used to join us on Growth quite often, so we moved it to noon because he's now based in the States, so can't really join us. It's got a certain pitch or spiel that he uses when people reach out to him to work for equity, and goes something along the lines of, so you're asking me to come and build your dream for free. And that's the bottom line of it. You know, you get what you pay for. You can't expect people to come and work for peanuts for you, when especially, see, there are people that will do things for social goods, but those people go and work for a charity if they really want to do that. They don't come and work for a business who's trying to make as much money as you possibly can, and there's nothing wrong with it. You should do that. But at the same time, if you're trying to make as much money as you can, then people expect you to pay either what they think they're worth or what the market commands, and so on. So you need to bear that in mind. But on the other hand, as the ladies mentioned here, there are some things you can try and do. And unfortunately, it's a balancing act between getting what you can for the money you can pay, and also being a darn good leader in terms of convincing people to come and work for less than they might be able to get elsewhere. So you need to find the right incentives for them. Okay, we've got 13 minutes to go. A quick reset of the conversation, and then maybe we can take one last question. I'll put that in the chat. The ladies can read it at their own leisure as I do the reset, and then I'll read it out loud. So this is Startup Talent Q&A. It's our 151st session. We've been doing these for 4 years now. And the idea is that we're here to help founders with whatever challenges or questions or need for clarity you may have when it comes to your people journey, whether you want to know how and where to find the right people, how to maybe interview them or test them, how to hire them, how much to pay them, how to empower them, and all that jazz. There are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. It's a learning curve for us all. There's no point in sending me messages via LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever you're sending them through now, because unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions there. So if you do want to ask our brilliant panelists, you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. You can either click on the links that I've shared in those live streams, or simply go to our site, startup2scaleup.club, find today's session, which is Startup Talent Q&A 151, click join, quick registration. You'll then get an email with a link, and then you click on that link and you'll get into our call here on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only. When you're here, all you have to do is just type your question in the chat. We'll give you the mic, and then you can ask our panelists. And by the way, there are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. If your questions are not on talent, then save them for the other events we run. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of the month UK startup law, and third Friday of the month UK startup finances. All from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, and you can RSVP to any of them via our site, startup to scaleup.club. And actually, when you're there, why not join our WhatsApp community? It's quite easy to do so. There's a WhatsApp icon at the top and bottom of your screen. You'll join a peer-to-peer network of founders, investors, and operators, and also get alerts to all future events we run. Now, without further ado, we've got a question. I think this might be our last one for today. We're a pre-seed stage food tech startup in Glasgow, where we produce sustainable food packaging solutions. We're about to onboard our first full-time employees. What HR metrics should we focus on to assess our recruitment efforts and employee satisfaction, especially as we plan for rapid scaling? How can we use these metrics to refine our hiring process and improve retention? Okay, so seed stage, I'm assuming sort of early stages, quite early. I guess there's a few questions here. Metrics, and then two, how to use those metrics to refine and improve. So maybe we can start with Rosie this time, and then Emily, please.
Thanks, Anton. Yeah, there's a couple of questions here, it looks like. I always I find it's, I guess through experience over the years when founders and startup founders ask this question, sometimes I think the question is the wrong question. It's too early. If you're about to onboard your first full-time employees, that means you're about to find out what your culture really is, because right now you don't actually know until they've started. And that change in dynamics and the type of people you bring in and how you work with them is going to start solidifying what your culture looks like and feels like. And of course, you have a much more important role to play now in ensuring that what you allow, because what you allow becomes the culture, is in fact aligned with the type of business you want to have people say you are. You want people to perceive you as, to be able to go out and say, yes, I work for a good employer. We have these good values and we have these good behaviors, and this is the type of culture that we're in. The metrics that you're going to be looking at when you say assessing your recruitment effort, well, a good one to look at is who's still there at the end of their probation period. How long is your probation period? What have you put in place to make sure that the probation period is successful? What have you put in place to make these people that you've hired feel like they are being supported during that probationary period? And of course, with the Labour government looking to make changes in these areas, is probably a question more and more companies should be asking themselves, with people having some probation becoming a practical thing once it's been rolled out. I think that metrics, obviously, I've been quite data centric from HR perspective for many years. I think it's important to look at, various things when you're collecting HR metrics, so not just start date, you're looking at demographics. What's the average age of the people that you're hiring? What does your DEI look like? Are you being consistent with salaries, or have you somehow fallen into a subconscious bias of paying a certain group of people more money than other groups of people, even though they're all coming in to do the same role, that sort of thing. And I think that you should be looking at your people data often, because it helps to really design and mold how your team will eventually look like, what type of people, what type of organization you're going to be having. Like I said, sometimes it's a good question, but sometimes it's a little bit too early. If you're just onboarding your first full-time employees, you need a few months to actually observe what type of culture your business is evolving into. Is it still, 3 months from now, it would be good to hear from this same company. Do they believe they have the same culture as what they had before people came on board full time? Out of the people that were hired in the first batch, how many are still there? How many of the exits were actually decided by the company, and how many were the individuals choosing to leave, and what did the exit interviews tell them? Because of course you should be collecting exit interview information, because that really does help you to improve your business. I could talk on this for a long time, but I'm mindful we don't have much time, so I'm going to stop right there so that Emily can chip in.
Thank you very much, Rosie.
Thanks,
That's
Rosie.
very useful.
I think what Rosie said is spot on. I'm a big fan. I mean, and not to counter what Rosie said, I think there are some metrics you can put in place to, I don't want to say experiment, but to test on the new people that you're bringing on board. But make sure that you are really, really clear on what those are. So, for example, you've probably done a whole lot of work on creating a job description and doing the interview process, and and for a small company, that is a lot of work. So, as the people are coming on board, ask them questions about, how was that experience? It could be a scaling question, it could be quantitative or qualitative, whatever. Ask them some very, very good questions about how was the interview process? How do you find the job description? Things like that. That's can be a bit of a baseline for some of your HR metrics, if you will, the recruitment ones at least. And then as they're coming on board, have those regular interactions with these people. It's not just part of their onboarding, it's also sort of a way of gleaning information. So it could be a month in saying, okay, so this is what you were hired to do. Do you find that still the case? And sort of do a bit of a compare and contrast to what they thought they were being hired for versus what they're actually doing. And really try and just do a bit of that measurement. Again, it's going to be quite almost anecdotal and maybe a little more subjective than proper clean metrics, which will come in time. But it's a really great way to start asking those questions, get yourself comfortable with asking those questions, get your team members from the get-go comfortable with answering and giving feedback. Because if you start looking for HR metrics and you're already down the line with a number of employees, and then you're suddenly asking them a lot of information, that can be quite confronting. And they may be likely, not for sure, but they may be likely more hesitant to respond as sort of honestly and candidly. So I'm a big fan of ask the questions from the beginning, but form those questions to make sure it makes sense. Another HR metric that you can start from the beginning is some basic things like, how are you communicating with them? So it's a little bit like, okay, we're having our one-to-one weekly meetings. Are we actually having them all? Yes or no. Are they helpful? Yes or no. Things like that you can do that is putting the onus more on yourself, but those are all people metrics. Those will help, kind of solidify or confirm the culture as it is and help support its evolution. Because your culture, as soon as you bring on new people, will not be the same. It can be in the same vein, but it will never be exactly the same, because that's, as soon as you add more humans, it will change. So I would say that split the difference. You don't need any tools for these metrics except for maybe a capturing tool. It could be as simple as a tally worksheet or a Google form or something like that. But ask them questions, clearly document them, make sure it's fairly transparent why you're asking, and then track that sort of, the questions and the results you're getting as you go along. When you're a little bit bigger, you can sort of say, okay, what do we actually want to be measuring then? And what metrics should we be adding in? But you probably won't know the metrics you want until you get to a point where you have more people. But good luck. It's a hard thing to do, but if you're curious and open to that feedback, you'll start setting that tone.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank you to you both. Just following up on that, Emily, on that sort of part of metrics you can ask people early to do. I've encountered this a couple of times, so maybe not enough to have sufficient data, but I thought it was quite, what's the best word? Interesting, cute. And the reason why those two words or terms is because one of them, people didn't really bother fill in it, and the other one people did, and they actually proved quite well and useful to the company. But what they used to do is at the end of each day, all staff, I mean, not that they had a ton, so one of them I think had 11, the other one had 14 when I was helping them. They would fill something out, and literally all they had was on a scale from 1 to 10, how useful and productive did they feel they were during that day? And 2, how supported did they feel they were by, you know, the organization and their peers, basically, on that day? And literally, that was an anonymous way to enter those data, and they would look at that on a weekly basis to try and sort of, they'd have these meetings and try and find out, you know, what more could they do to take that forward. But again, one of those companies, they filled it out quite regularly. The other one, people didn't bother. So but maybe that's a conversation for another time, if Rosie and Emily will both be on the call. Ladies, it's now 1 o'clock, so I see Rosie's got a hard stop. Thank you very much, Rosie. Emily, do you want to give us anything in terms of parting words, or do you need to go as well?
No, I can just give quick parting words. I would say thank you to anybody who's been listening to this. Again, the transition to having to even think about the people side of a business, especially as a founder, especially in the early days where your focus is on a service or a product, and then suddenly, oh wow, we have people involved. It's not an easy one, but it needs to be considered, and it has to have some time and space. But as I said at the beginning, do it with some compassion. Don't rush things for the sake of having a tick box. Ask the people you're working with or that you want to work with what they need and want, and then evaluate what you can offer and what you should be doing. You won't get it right at the beginning, and you will have bumps all along. I mean, there's companies with, obviously, we hear about 100,000 people who are still getting it wrong. So just have some compassion for yourself, but continue to have fun with it. It is a lot of fun when you can add people to your team who are contributing to the success of your company as you're scaling, because you're just adding to that joy of, you know, getting things done. It can be really, really lonely. So find people who, you know, will help you with that. But good luck.
Well, thank you very much, Emily. Huge thanks to Rosie as well, who had to leave. Just a quick reminder to everybody, this was Startup Talent Q&A. It was our 151st session. We've been doing these for 4 years now. We currently run 6 regular events: Mondays Talent, Tuesdays Product and Tech, Wednesdays Growth, Thursdays Fundraising, second Friday of the month UK Startup Law, and third Friday of the month UK Startup Finances. You can RSVP to any of them via our site, startup.scaleup.club. And actually, when you're there, you might want to also join our WhatsApp community. There's a WhatsApp icon at the top and bottom of that site, and you can actually even get alerts via that. Now, in terms of my parting words, but actually forgot just before the parting words, for those of you that tuned in via the live streams, whether it was LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please join us directly here on Microsoft Teams next time. It's audio only, which means you can join us from anywhere, on any platform or any device for that matter, because it makes for a better conversation. And let's be honest, sending a question without having you here for us to ask any follow-ups, it doesn't get you the best answers in the world, let's just say. So next time, follow us, join us here, please. Now, as far as my parting words are concerned, just remember the startup journey can be both exciting, but also quite challenging. So try to have some fun in the meantime, but also be kind to yourself and everyone else for that matter too. Otherwise, have a great afternoon and see you tomorrow for Startup Product and Tech Q&A. Thank you and God bless. Bye-bye for now.